Morning, everyone. Welcome to the first ever Flourishing in the Garden training here today. Really excited to share everything with you guys. I will let you know we are recording this training, so I'm just gonna pin my video for now, and when we're in discussions, I'll try to remember to unpin so that we can all share. People are still hopping on, so we'll kind of give them a little bit. It is 9:02 though, so we'll get rolling here. But just a few things. Feel free to stay on camera if you would like, if that's comfortable, but also permission to go off camera if that's supportive for you. Especially as we get towards the second half of training, when we're moving into the movement or experiential part where we're doing different practices. You can definitely feel free then to go off camera if that's feels more comfortable for you. So yeah, so we'll get started. I will share the presentation here, and we will get rolling. Yeah, so also if you haven't yet, feel free to, grab some water, find something to take notes on. Whether that is your, like a piece of paper or whatever is comfortable for you there with notes and all the things. Okay. Alrighty. So, yeah, this is, like I said, the first training for flourishing in the garden. We will, hang on one second. I guess I can't, apologies, I can't share my screen and let people into in here. So I'm gonna have to do that. Admit, and hey, Lauren, so you're on here today. I'm going to make you co-host. So if you could watch for when people hop on and just let them in. Awesome, thank you. So we have a couple of folks that are on here. We have some undergrads that are here today to support, and then also Fraser, which some of you guys know will be hopping on. So awesome. Alrighty, yeah, we will get rolling here. So this is our little training overview for today. We'll go through, there's 3 different parts. So kind of, as I mentioned, we'll have a experiential part, the second part, and then at the end, we'll kind of finish up with a couple other points and then have a reflection and discussion. I definitely try to layer in a lot of time for, polls and discussions. So at any time, feel free to drop things into the chat, and we will go from there. Feel free to ask questions. You can, unmute when we have these discussions and breakout sessions and everything, of course. So yeah. So just a little bit about us at the Parsi Lab. If you're not familiar, it's a physical activity research and community implementation lab at Virginia Tech with Dr. Hardin, and Fraser is our graduate research assistant that has been with the lab for the past few years. And so essentially we use our talents, expertise, and passion to serve others. So we do this through evidence-based, evidence-informed, and then evidence-based adaptations, training and evaluation. So specifically for FIG, this was created from about March to June, and then throughout the pilot as well, we were definitely adding things to the program. But we were able to pilot from end of June to middle of August with a couple of agents, and then we've adapted the program, and that's kind of how we are here today. So this specific training was really created out of a need for an adaptable, holistic, integrative wellness program. So, you know, we did some research into the different offerings, both with VCE and FMP. And we found that, you know, there were programs that might offer some concepts of gardening, that might offer different concepts of nutrition, maybe some movement, but there wasn't a program that necessarily touched all of those things. So that's where Flourishing in the Garden was kind of born out of. And so a little bit, I'll kind of just share a little bit of my experience, and kind of as I'm doing that, feel free to share about yourself in the chat, name, region, and why you're here, but just a little bit about my background. So I've really been growing food since I was a kid. It was always something that was super interesting to me and really inspired by my grandparents, two different sets. You know, I'm originally from Baltimore, so I had grandparents that kind of lived out in the country. I also had a set of grandparents that lived in Baltimore City. And so my grandma there always had a phenomenal porch garden. And so even to this day, the smell of basil reminds me of my grandma. So yeah, I was exposed to it from a pretty young age. And from there, I went to Roanoke College in 2013. I majored in environmental studies, minored in religion and sociology, and had a peace and justice concentration. And so that kind of led me into more food justice and that kind of work. And so community gardening is definitely a big piece of that, and how we can create not just sustainability, but empowerment through growing our own food and kind of like taking that power back. So I was, before Parsi Lab, I was a community garden coordinator for the past 6 years in different both state and nonprofit organizations. And so that's kind of what led me here. Backtrack a little bit from the yoga pieces. Before I left Baltimore, when I was 17, I did my first 200-hour yoga teacher training. So I've been teaching almost 11 years now. And in 2019, when I finished college, I did my 300-hour training. And then I decided to take it a step further and completed a Master of Science in Yoga Therapy. And so, yeah, kind of all that together is that personal and professional experience has kind of led me here to Flourishing in the Garden. So yeah, if you guys would like, you know, if we were in a real life setting, right, we'd be able to be in person and kind of see everyone and kind of have that connection. So as we're like in the chat, please feel free to comment on people's stuff. Feel free to use the emojis. I love the emojis. And at any point, feel free to use like the emojis that are in your, you know, the little like your personal video box. So like I might ask questions or anything, feel free to use anything there as well. So compliments on, oh, thank you. And inclusive of everything needed. I printed everything out and was very impressed. Awesome. Yeah. So I did drop the manual and the agenda in the chat too, for those of you that might need that. I'll share a couple other things too. And like I have other resources layered into our training that'll be helpful, especially for like the teach back parts. So thank you. I love gardening and yoga. Inspired to share that love. Awesome. Love that, April. Hey, I've seen this. Cool. So if you guys want to hop in the chat and just kind of see who's here, if anyone wants to unmute too and talk, that's great too. You can definitely do that. Mike, various youth programs, rec centers. Okay. Love gardening and yoga.
And then I just wanted to introduce myself again. So my name is Acadia, if that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, please.
Okay. Okay, great. So my name is Acadia. I'm in the Blacksburg area. I go to Virginia Tech. And this spring and summer, I'm supporting a civic innovation called Hope for Heat Resilience that focuses on disadvantaged communities in the northwest region of Roanoke City. And I'm hoping to use this big training to further connect the youth to nature and the land. And if anybody is in that area, I'd love to partner or collab just to reach more audiences and have some more support during this program coming forth. So just reach out to me in the private chat, and I'd love to meet some more people that way too. Thanks.
Thank you, Acadia. Yeah, definitely. I love that. Use this space to collaborate for sure. So that's why I kind of asked about region. So if you see people that are near you that maybe you don't know or you do know that are here, just use that as a time to, yeah, connect and make those connections. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing. Does anybody else want to feel free to share anything before we move on? All righty. So our goals and training objectives for today. So what is FIG? And so I love this, flourishing in the garden. It was initially garden-based flourishing. And then Samantha was like, she's all about the the acronym. So we decided to shift it to flourishing in the garden because FIG and FIGs are great. And also, can you fig it? So that's like our little our little tagline there. But again, this is a holistic approach to mind, body, and land that incorporates permaculture principles, yoga principles, yoga shapes, breath work, different practices there, gardening and nutrition education, and is also informed by the flourishing index. So that's something that you guys had in like the initial registration where it asked those 6 questions about the different domains of flourishing. So some of our goals here today are to really build that inter and intrapersonal connection and community. And so what that means is really being able to kind of connect to ourselves internally so that we can then share this work outwardly with our participants. Some other ones are the increased fruit and vegetable consumption, which is one of our primary outcomes as well for participants, daily mindfulness and breath work, physical activity, emotional awareness, and personal accountability. And so I'm gonna drop our first poll question in. So feel free to take a couple moments here just to answer these questions. Just trying to get an idea of where everyone's at here today. Alrighty, and so we have just 2 more folks finishing up here. Oh, maybe 3 more. Alrighty, so we're gonna end that. I'll share those results as well. So are you familiar with permaculture? So we have some that are very familiar, it kind of varies there. Some that probably have, I see a lot of people are in that one space, so probably have heard of the term, maybe not as familiar with it. Do you practice yoga? We have some that, again, maybe are somewhat familiar there or somewhat have somewhat of a practice. Breath work. Interesting that we have more breath work than yoga here. Mindfulness. Again, a little bit more mindfulness than even the yoga or the breath work. Meditation. Cool. Some more meditation than both of those. This is really interesting. How long have you been growing? Love this. The reason why I put it this way, one of the great yoga philosophers, Patanjali, he talks about how you're a beginner for the first 30 years of your practice. And I think that's really great. And to just kind of apply that to everything that we do. So that's awesome. We do have some masters here that have been growing for over 30 years. That's awesome. Have you started your garden this? I had to put this like last answer. This is a trick question because my garden is always in process because it's like it is real. For me, I love living in Virginia because we have the ability to grow year round. So I'm always doing something in the garden. So we still have some people that haven't started yet, some that have. So it's a little early. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. We'll keep on rolling here. So for the program, our primary outcomes here are fruit and vegetable consumption, the garden self-efficacy, and cooking knowledge. And so I did share in the initial like registration email that it was like a weekly journal. And so it kind of had those boxes where you could check off the fruit and vegetable consumption, check off like your mindfulness or breath work or movement. And so that is a helpful tool that not only that you could use, but also, to work with the participants. And that is one of the handouts that we give them just to kind of keep track. And it's really interesting in our pilot program, Megan Garrity definitely shared a lot about how, the kids were really excited to come back and share that like after the second and third week. So that's pretty exciting to see that. So considerations when facilitating this program. These are just a couple that are important that I wanted to share. So being able to listen, and this kind of goes into the respect piece too. So this program specifically is directed towards youth. And the importance there is being able to observe, which is our first permaculture principle, but also to be able to honor these kids as they come in, to be able to use them, kind of like witness them and use that curiosity and that spirit that they have. I love working with kids because they do have such an interesting mind to work with. So that listening and respect kind of goes together. Our languaging, which we'll kind of get into a little bit in the next few slides, but kind of how we talk to our participants, using this space as a space for connection. And like, not only are we the facilitator or teacher, but also letting our participants teach us as we move through. Reliability. So this kind of goes also with the group guidelines and clarity. But, when you are saying you're going to do certain things, making sure that you are being that stable, reliable person for these kids. It's not just children that we want to show up for like that. That's any program that we offer. But just making sure that when you say things, if you say something the first week and you're like, yeah, our last session, we're going to do da-da-da, like those kids are going to remember exactly every detail that you shared with them. So that's one thing. It's pretty amazing how they can, they really store those little things that you might think they would forget in their brain. So remembering one thing that Dr. Hardin shared with me, this was a couple years ago, when I was working on the HCAT grant for Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth for one of the nonprofits I was working for. And I was like, it's really hard because I don't know what like all of our partners are going to actually like show up and be able to do or support us in. And she was like, under promise, over deliver. And that always stuck with me. So again, going back to that reliability aspect, maybe using that under promise and over delivering when we talk about that. So clarity, and again, this kind of ties into the group guidelines, being really clear with what you're doing, sharing the different resources that we have so that the kids have different, I'm looking over here at the newsletters, like they have different pieces that they can kind of connect to, and really addressing all the different learning styles as we're moving through each session, and creating those group guidelines so that everyone knows kind of how things are going to go. And there's a couple ways. Maybe you have, as an agent or a program assistant or a volunteer, maybe you guys have your own set of guidelines when you're working with kids. If you're partnering with certain organizations, your community partners will probably also have guidelines. So just getting really clear on those is helpful. Being compassionate, understanding that we are working with, kids in this space, and just being willing to show up for them. And again, going back to the listening and respect, but also the last one, support. So I see, let me check the chat. Oh yeah, Pam, I just saw it's a great time for winter sewing. Okay, thank you. Yeah, great. So I do have another poll here. I just want to get anyone's thoughts on, these considerations. If you have other considerations when you are facilitating that you really want to share with the group, but I'll give you a couple moments here just to drop anything in the chat that you would like. All right, so we'll take just another moment here. Alrighty. So we'll see. Wait a second. So are you guys not seeing the full slideshow?
I can see the slideshow.
We have been when you've been sharing.
Okay. It's just not showing up like on my end right now for some reason. Okay, I'm gonna just reshare and then we'll go from there. Okay, thank you. Okay. Here we are. Oh. Okay, so I'm not sure why I can't see the answers in the short answer section, but okay. Well, we're gonna just continue on. So yeah, some other considerations. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to check out the manual or anything. But there is a section on just different considerations when we are facilitating. So I did have a few questions here. I do have it in a poll, but considering the last poll did not work for that, we will just drop these into the chat. So just some questions to kind of go off of how can we provide a compassionate and safe environment for our participants? So we can start there. And safe is really in quotation marks simply because safety is definitely more relative. It's a relative term. It's different for everyone. So yeah, if you'd like to drop anything in the chat there. Any thoughts on how to create that compassionate and safe environment for our participants? Welcome them and acknowledge them at the beginning of each session. Yeah, I like that. And if anyone wants to unmute too, feel free.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
I guess looking for some advice. So a lot of people, and especially kids that I have talked to about yoga, find yoga to be a bit silly or they're uncomfortable with breath work. So what's a good way to break that initial barrier and to kind of convince kids that yoga is cool and just to be comfortable being silly and with any kind of body regulations and things like that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Well, specifically, I know you're working, that was like Acadia, right? Yeah. You're working in Roanoke, and when I was in my undergrad, I volunteered for a semester at the West End Center. And so that was probably like similar group to who you might be working with, or that would be a suggestion for partnership too, if you haven't already contacted them. But yeah, I remember working with them, and it was it's definitely, you have to be able to practice it and believe in it yourself and kind of like laugh at all the things. I think really moving with grace there, and the practices will speak for themselves. So I think that as we kind of share these and expose them to throughout the weeks especially, that they will start to catch on. From Megan Garrity, who is the program assistant that ran FIG for a pilot, she actually shared that in the first week, the kids were not into it at all. They really didn't, they thought it was silly. They were like, oh, I don't want to do yoga. And and then by the second and third week, they're all coming back and they're like, oh, can I teach the pose of the day, or can I do? So they were really like, even by that second or third week, they were bought into it. And then by the end of the program, one of the students came in and said that because there is a week, I believe it's week 5, where we kind of dive into some of the more like emotional regulation. But by week 5, that or the end, this participant came and said that he was um, in school, and in a time when he would normally, result to violence and fighting, he was able to remove himself from the situation and use his box breathing to come back to himself and calm down. And like just her telling that story, almost brought tears to my eyes, because if that's like the only shift that this program can provide, like, that's enough. But so I think just continuing to do the work and it will speak for itself. I don't necessarily know that we need to
Okay.
convince.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was a long answer. That was a long
No,
answer.
that was
But
perfect. So I have contacted the West Youth Center, and that'd be a great activity because I got the same kind of vibe from the
yeah,
new yes. Yes.
awesome. And I do have some other Roanoke contacts for you too, because I have a lot of friends up there. So we'll connect after this as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. It is important to read to your group, or to read your group. Pam, thank you. Just reading through the chat here. Eye contact, smile, use names and ask questions. Yep, ask questions, be curious. It's a lot of kind of what the weekly program, we have a lot of questions and journal reflections. Set rules and expectations to give them boundaries. Yep, that really helps with that safety, making connections, knowing a bit of their background. Yep. And knowing their background, especially if you're partnering with another agency, is getting clear on that before you go in, asking the questions, allowing yourself to be silly and lighthearted with them helps to break down. Yep, for sure. Can you call it something else, like strike a pose? Oh, for sure. Yes, Michael, you can. There's actually there's yoga freeze dance. That's like one of my favorites. And so that strike a pose reminded me of that. So you play music, and then when the music freezes, they have to freeze in a yoga pose. So yep, strike a pose. Yes, I love that, Michael. Love. Awesome. Yeah, and so thank you guys for sharing all that. We can move to the next question. So how can we ensure that this idea of safety when we're offering movement, mindfulness, breath work, and meditation? So any thoughts? I know some of us aren't as familiar with those practices, but anyone that has practiced those, or if you have any thoughts specifically when we're offering these kind of practices, feel free to offer that in the chat, or again, if you want to unmute or share anything.
Um, I'll chirp in again, but another question about regarding a safe environment this time. I think it can be difficult for kids to feel comfortable like closing their eyes and losing that kind of sense of surrounding like surrounding awareness. And so just kind of wondering ways to help kids feel comfortable with closing their eyes and being in tune with their body, um, instead of being like one eye open, like what's going on kind of thing around me.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually one of our examples on one of the next slides. So we will get to that for sure. Thank you for asking that. All right, so yeah, let kids know it's okay if you cannot do something fully the first time. Yep. Offer alternatives. Yep, variations. And you guys will see today in the practice that there's a lot that we can offer for variations, mirroring the correct movement and watching to guide them. Yep. Yep, Katie, you have some really good points. Yeah, so we'll with that, we'll go on to our some of these considerations or different points from the consideration. So again, like I said, safety is really a relative term that can differ from person to person. So being able again to observe the group, to be curious. One thing is that specifically when we're teaching postures, and sometimes, you know, like specifically if you're in a down dog or something where your head is down as a facilitator, it can be challenging to talk and to actually look at people, and we want to make sure that anatomically we're not like pulling a neck muscle or, you know, injuring ourselves while we're trying to demonstrate and also witness what's going on in the room. So something that can be helpful is to provide space for you to demonstrate the posture first, and then you can kind of come back to a seated or standing position and kind of talk everyone through it. And usually kids catch on really quickly. So after you kind of demonstrate something, they'll usually hop into it. Or sometimes kids are familiar with different postures, whether they've practiced in school or in a gym class or anything. So sometimes they will already know them as well too. So, but also again, coming back to that clarity piece, we can offer that for our participants around the program components, any kind of intentions, but also holding our participants accountable for upholding the group guidelines. So we do want to be mindful of that. But yeah, so through all those things we can strive, and this is kind of like my tagline for life, not specifically FIG, but just everything, is that like I really believe that all beings deserve a space to step into their full potential. And so that's kind of the intention here at this program, is like, can we create a space where people do feel safe, so they can explore themselves and also have that community support. So Acadia, here is the example that you were asking a question on, because yeah, closing the eyes can be challenging. So a couple points just, you know, to start off, how can we ensure this safety when we're offering movement, mindfulness, and meditation? So permissive languaging, intention, with the intention to lift others up and guide them to be curious in their own bodies. And so what permissive languaging means, if you've ever been to like a personal training session or a boot camp, or, you know, you've trained anywhere, you might hear more assertive or directive languaging where it's telling you exactly what to do. In yoga, we really, and you know, some lineages of yoga do still use that directive languaging. In my practice and experience teaching and in the therapeutic spaces as well, we use permissive languaging. So we're more so inviting someone or offering practices for people to then choose. So specifically in this example, you know, in meditation, visualization, even throughout our movement and breathwork practices, we might hear these typical cues to close your eyes. And so we really don't know what people have been through. We don't know where people are coming from all the time. We're not having our participants fill out a whole intake about their background, right? So there's some things we just don't know. And as educators, it is our responsibility to acknowledge this and then to be adaptable at how we offer these certain practices. So the common cue here is to close your eyes. And maybe instead, you can try, if it feels comfortable to you, maybe you close the eyes, or you can soften the gaze. And so what that means is, you know, you can instruct them, especially if you're outside, that can be great. You can instruct them to look at a green space. You can instruct them to just kind of take their gaze away from the group to look at the sky. So any of those options. Acadia, does that answer? Do you feel complete with that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and having someone to focus on like the drishti.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you can have them. Yep. So drishti is again like focal point in yoga. That's a Sanskrit term. But yeah, So exactly, focus on the drishti and focusing on, like, again, softening. So I really like that word because it helps us take, we are focusing, but allowing the eyes to kind of, yeah, melt a little bit into that space. Alrighty, so another thing to consider as we're facilitating and moving through specifically the shapes, is just like the position and where we are in the shape. So this is in like our first week child's pose or child shape. And a potential discomfort here is that the head is down. So again, we're limiting that vision while the back and the hips are exposed. And so potential adaptations here, again, before we start any of our practices or like the movement, breathwork, meditation, it can be helpful to offer a posture, or whether that's seated or standing or any posture that you kind of find is a resting posture for people to come back to, again, to create that sense of autonomy and safety for them. But just a space that they can, if they're not comfortable, to come back to. So that's also another thing that we want to consider, is that some of these postures, yeah, just might not feel as comfortable for people. And another option too, in typical classes, I feel like in gym settings, there's usually a teacher at the front, and then all the mats are kind of set up. And some people might be in rows, and there might be a back row, front row, whatever. And so that can kind of be uncomfortable for people too, especially if they've never practiced before. So considering that, I personally, I don't like to be at the front as a teacher. I really prefer to set up in a circle so that people, everyone feels like they're kind of together. It's a little bit more unifying, I feel like, in that way. And then also everyone, our gaze is all in, and people aren't like behind each other. So just another option there too. So again, helpful tips here, having something that everyone can come back to if they feel uncomfortable. We definitely want to provide a space where people can, again, choose what they need for themselves in the moment. So any variation, but also we want to be aware. And again, I know there's a lot of content, and there's for some of you in the program, you aren't yoga practitioners yet. Maybe you're not as familiar with yoga or breathwork or mindfulness. So it is a lot going on, but we still want to be able to have our own tools to ground and to stay present in the room with everyone. And again, this last point that I've kind of mentioned a couple of times now is that we really want to teach. We want to be that mentor and that someone to guide and lead our participants, but we also want to be open for our students and our participants to teach us and to show us how to share this material and also adapt it. And that kind of goes even further. You guys are out here doing the work, sharing this program, and that kind of like feedback from your participants and then the feedback from you to us helps us then adapt the program to make it better. So our main pillars here for today is to observe. So again, that's our first permaculture principle. So in permaculture, the first principle, being able to witness the humans in front of you, being aware of their energy, noticing. And this also relates to the first principle there. So also being able to live it to give it. So what that really means is, if you've looked through the manual already, you might have seen there are facilitator challenges throughout. And so I also encourage you to do all the journal prompts and to work through the videos, of course, and everything like that. But just so that you are really engaging in the content, so that you have your own personal experience to then share. So the last one is intentional and appropriate openings and closings. And so we'll kind of work into that here as we move forward in the next few slides. Our program and these pictures that are kind of layered throughout are from they are from the pilot that we shared. So, so yeah, let's continue to move through. These are some of the infographics that are in the training on the website. So just, we created these with the intention just to have a basis for each of the different kind of perspectives that we're drawing from here. So the different chakras, and we'll get into this a little bit later as we work towards the practice section, but yeah, we'll leave that for now. And then, so the permaculture principles, again, another infographic here to use. We also have this infographic, which has a little bit more about each of the principles kind of layered in there. Yeah, our flourishing infographic that touches on the different domains of health. And then the 8 limbs of yoga. And so for these, we've kind of worked into most of the 8 limbs without necessarily saying like, oh, this is this limb or this limb or this limb, but we kind of work throughout this. So I also wanted to include this infographic for you. So just to touch on a couple of the asynchronous components, and we'll talk more about this at the end of the training when we're working through the website and other materials. But these are kind of the 3 main videos. So the permaculture principles, we have the yoga practice cues, and then also the session practice videos as well. So we have our movement break here. And if Fraser would care to lead. Fraser is awesome, our graduate research assistant in the lab. Fraser, aka Frazzle Dazzle. All right, thanks.
Hi everyone. Yeah, we'll just hop right into it. I would like to invite everyone to check in real quick with how they're feeling though. So I can't see people's faces or their bodies, which is fine. Like that's okay. Keep your camera off if you'd like. This is a space for you to make choices based on what your energy level is and what you're feeling. So, but based on your energy level, and maybe if you've been sitting all day, you could go ahead and stand up for this movement or stay seated. These movements can be either way. And here, let me move my camera so that you can see maybe a little bit better. And we are just going to start whether seated or standing. Let me make sure you guys can see me. Whether seated or standing, just really feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice how you feel. Perhaps notice where your spine's angles are. Bringing it up taller. Your head is over your heart's over your hips, whether seated or standing. And whether seated or standing, go ahead and take a wide stance. This can be a little bit wider than your hip width or whatever feels good to you in your position. And I'd just like to invite you to inhale and reach upward if you'd like. Just breathing in, really reaching for something greater than yourself. And exhale, just cactus your arms down, just feeling a little bit of a heart opener. And then on your next inhale, reach up again. And then on your exhale, maybe introduce a movement in your knees. So maybe bending the knees, turn into a shallow squat. And then on your inhale, reach up. And then exhale, maybe finding an even deeper squat as you come down, maybe bringing your hands down in front of you. And then on your inhale, come back up. So these are different levels that you can choose depending on how you're feeling. You can keep just the arm movement, the shallower squat, or come all the way down. And then if you would like to keep the slow pace, inhaling, exhaling down, that is up to you. It's your choice and based on how you're feeling. And if you'd like, if you want some more energy, go a little faster. Just checking in, maybe trying both to see what feels good for you today. And then on your next exhale, whether you're taking the full movement, just the arms or just the legs even, maybe you just explore exhaling out the mouth with an audible ha. So as you prepare, take a breath in. And as you come down, just let it exhale out the mouth. And maybe just notice how you might be building heat. If you'd really like to get some energy in, on the top of your inhale, hop up. And then exhale, come down. You want some cardio. So this is just depending on what you need. Ask yourself what it is, whether it's a hop at the end and then slowly coming down. Remembering your inhales, remembering your exhales. Perhaps you've noticed your body needs something different than what you've been doing. Maybe you're nursing any injuries. Really just exploring what you need, keeping the movement if you'd like, or bringing in other movement, maybe a roll on the shoulders as you come up, instead of reaching up. Remembering the breath. If you've been seated this whole time, you can continue your arm movements or try testing standing up from your seat as you inhale up and then slowly sitting down in your seat again. There are many options. All right, our next cycle, shake it out a little bit. I'd like to invite you to stay standing or seated, being on your fill. And I just like to invite you to notice what you notice. Maybe your heart's beating, maybe put some jumps in there. Maybe you built some heat. Bring a hand to your heart. And just notice the beat of your heart. Maybe slow down your breath. Remembering your tall spine. Remembering the ground underneath your feet. Thank you for moving together. I'd like to invite you to set an intention after this movement to remember how you feel in this moment and how this can be something you share in this program. You can inhale in deeply into the belly, then slowly exhale out the mouth. Inhale, exhale. All right, thank you all. That was 5 minutes of movement together. 5 minutes goes a long way.
Thank you, Fraser. That was excellent. Appreciate it. If anybody wants to share any kind of reflection on how that practice was or anything in the chat or unmute, feel free to as I get this PowerPoint back up.
I thought it was energizing. So thank you, Fraser.
I was surprised at how out of breath I got real quick. So
I know, I was too. I was like, oh, wow.
And I had to take it back a step. I was doing the squats and I was like, nope, no more. Just the arms.
good. I'm glad you listened to yourself. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, Pam, thank you, Fraser. 5 minutes can be powerful. It really can. It really can. Awesome. Alrighty, so we'll move into our next section here, which is one of our main pillars. So how to open and close a session. And really like before you start the session, and some of you guys mentioned this in the one of the questions that we had in the beginning, just how important it is to witness your group and acknowledge your group, welcome everybody in. And so kind of as you're doing that, just doing a quick scan of your audience, just noticing what you notice. And just some examples that I had here is, are they full of energy, excited, talkative? Sometimes you kind of walk into a room and you might have you guys, I know some of you guys have worked with kids before, but you might, and even this happens with adults, but you might have your sample schedule and you walk into a room and you're like, nope, that schedule's thrown out at this point. Like that's not going to work today. We got to shift. So just being able to witness and notice. And, again, if they are full of energy or noticing that, maybe something like the practice that we just did, so like those goddess ha's with some jumps, that can help to kind of direct that energy and release some of that energy. Doing any of the different yoga flows, maybe starting with a walk around either, if you do have access to a garden space. It is mentioned throughout the manual that you can always start with that like walking meditation, that observation for everyone to get some movement in, but also to kind of connect to the space. Maybe jumping jacks, really any kind of movement to release that energy. And then after, it can be helpful to, once that energy has kind of been, cultivated and maybe released a little bit, then we can return to a grounding breath technique or some kind of breath focus where we're either using like a square breath or equal part breath as we get towards the later weeks. I think it's week 5 when we come to the throat chakra. We'll experience bee breath, which is like a humming breath. That's also really great to ground and kind of get people back into their bodies. But again, just being able to witness. Another example is, if they're seeming more low energy, either tired or distracted, maybe you could open the program. Like, again, like we just had those 5 minutes of goddess with the squats, and there's definitely some reflection that it was invigorating, energizing. So if you're witnessing that, maybe you encourage some kind of movement like that, or trying an invigorating breath work, movement through the spine. So we'll take some of the 6 movements of the spine in our practice today. We'll try to hit most of the postures of the week as we move through our practice later. And then also like the vocalization. So like that exhale, that Fraser was cueing there. Another point to kind of, again, because we might witness energy in the group, we might kind of apply a practice or try out a practice with them or a practice or 2 or 3 or whatever feels comfortable for the group. And then we want to kind of see how we might be able to direct the energy and kind of ground the energy back into the body and, our program. So directing that back into the space and either cueing a body scan or just noticing, being in that seat of the witness and the observer to just kind of notice what's going on in the body. So we'll take a quick breakout session here just to kind of try out some of those openings and closings. And so if you have your manual or you have, which I also did put the PDF in the chat, if you have your yoga cards, you can use those, any kind of breath work. And before we hop out, because we do have just a couple, we have a couple minutes, so we're definitely like on time, which is crazy. I'm gonna knock on wood right now. I said that. But we can always cue, if this is new to you, you can cue an inhale for a count. You can cue an exhale for a count. So maybe inhale for 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 3, 2, 1. Inhale 3, 2, 1. Exhale 3, 2, 1. So that's a a breath work that we can cue, any kind of movement practices that you have. You can cue that, again, the yoga cards, but I want to give like a couple, just a minute or two. If you guys have questions, you can drop anything in the chat before we go to breakout rooms, or you can unmute and ask. Back, everyone. We'll get rolling here. Just a quick overview of our second part of today's training. It will mostly be experiential. So we're going to run until, let's see, we'll take a break or lunch at 11:35. So we'll take like the next hour to practice and work through these. So I'll share the just a quick like session by session overview, and I will also put this in the chat for like our group teaching later as well, just so you guys have this document. I just made it in the past few days just because I was like, oh, this would be helpful. So just wanted to give like a quick overview of the chakras themselves, and as we're working through, I'll kind of like talk to these and the qualities, but just wanted to give that visual for you guys. And then this is the session by session overview that has the permaculture principles, the shapes, and the practices, and then also the other practices or activities that are kind of layered in each week. So, well, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll kind of get set up so that you guys can kind of see. I do have a mat set up. So I'm going to be practicing the postures mostly on the floor, but I will cue, like if you don't have that space to find a mat or to find the floor, you can take the postures or shapes or intentions from a chair as well, or from standing. So we will, let's get set up. Again, feel free to, I think pretty much everyone has their camera off, but feel free to have your camera off during the practice and just take this not only as time to, experience the sessions, but to really soak it in and have a little bit of space for yourself here today. Or to just come to a comfortable, either seated position if you want to sit. With your legs crossed, you can also come to hero's pose up on the shin bones. Really either that work for you. I will share with you guys, just for full disclosure, as I'm kind of moving through the practice with you guys today. I am almost 35 weeks pregnant, so my practice might look a little bit different. I'm going to talk through everything, and I have been practicing, so I can definitely do most of these things. It just, the transitions might look a little bit different. Okay, I'm going to admit. And so let's get started. Comfortable seat. And we'll start here just by either softening the gaze. Oh, congratulations. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll start here by softening the gaze, or if you'd like to close the eyes, you can. Maybe a gentle tuck of the chin. Just starting to notice how the breath is moving through the body. And then we'll start to bring our awareness to the base of the spine, so our root chakra. And the qualities associated here are earth. It's our space to be grounded, to be rooted. And so just kind of bringing that earth element to your mind. And we can even reach out with the fingertips. We can bring the fingertips to touch the earth and just having that connection with the ground. Imagine roots growing out of all the parts of the body that are connected to the ground here. Landing. Take a big breath in and a breath out. Breath in and a breath out. One more big breath in. We'll let it go. And then from here, we'll start to find our way to the hands and knees. We'll come to child's pose if you would like. So at any time in the practice, if you need to come back to a space, if something's not working for you, feel free to either come back to that seated position or to a standing position. And again, just permission to find any shapes that you need to explore different movement patterns as we're moving through this practice today. But we'll start to sink the hips back to the heels. So the knees can either be together or the knees can be wide. And we'll start to reach the arms forward. So maybe you cross the forearms here to create a rest. Maybe you reach the arms out and start to bring the forehead down to the mat. And if you're seated in your chair, you can walk the feet a little bit wider than the hips and just allow the upper body to fold over the thighs. So one thing when we're sharing these shapes or postures, we want to think about the intention behind the shape that we're coming into, and so that we can think about different variations or offerings for participants. So that's why I'm mentioning, like in seated, we can just take that forward bending because we're still finding that maybe flexion in the spine and that hinge in the hips as we fold forward. And so wherever you are here, just taking a couple breaths. Again, imagining as we draw the breath in, filling up the lungs, and then as you exhale, imagine sending that energy to the earth down through the ground. And then we'll slowly start to bring it back up to tabletop, to hands and knees. And we'll gently make our way up to standing. So maybe stepping a foot forward, coming into it. And from standing, we'll find our way into a goddess. So just like we practiced earlier with Fraser, we'll start to walk the feet a little bit wider than the hips. The toes will point slightly out. And the knees, we'll start to bring the knees over the ankles. So starting to maybe press the knees out. That'll help to engage the hips here, finding that nice alignment. And then maybe notice the orientation of the pelvis. So maybe tucking the tailbone slightly, maybe finding that kind of arch in the lower back, and then finding our way to neutral. And then options to bring the arms up, reaching up, exhale to sink. Inhale to reach it up. Exhale to sink. And we'll just land here. Taking a couple moments to ground. Again, imagine sending the energy through the feet. Thinking about how we can build stability and stay rooted. We'll bring the hands down to the thighs as another option or variation. And again, if you're seated in your chair, you can do this there just by having the feet a little bit wider than the hips. And then we'll start to incorporate the upper body by bringing one shoulder forward, and then we'll exhale and bring the other shoulder forward. Just finding that spinal twist here. And we'll quickly touch on, so our permaculture principle for the day, the main principle is to observe. So to witness not only the space in our external environment, but to notice the space in our internal environment. So just continuing here to be present as we move through this practice, to observe. If you set an intention for the practice earlier with Fraser, she mentioned the intention. You can bring that intention back to your body, or take a moment here. You can stay in your goddess or bring the feet together and find your mountain pose. But we'll just take a moment to revisit that intention or to create an intention for our practice. And then we'll rub the hands together to create a little bit of heat. Rub them together. And then we'll bring the hands to rest over the heart space. And just taking a moment, maybe gently tucking the chin to give space to that intention. And we can release the hands. We'll slowly start to find our way back down to the mat. Or if you're seated, you can stay there. So just coming down, and we'll find our way to our cat-cow. So we'll land in a tabletop. So the shoulders will rest over the hands. The hips will be over the knees. And if you're seated in your chair, just walk, bring the hips towards the edge of the chair. Sit up nice and tall, and we'll start to work through this cat-cow. So we'll tuck the tailbone and the chin to come towards each other to round through the spine. And we'll inhale to lift the head and the tailbone. And again, moving here with your own breath. So tucking the chin towards the hips, the tailbone here. Inhaling to bring head and tailbone up towards the ceiling. So if you're seated doing this, again, rocking the pelvis forward, rounding through the shoulders, and then finding that extension of the spine. Just continuing here with your own breath. So as we move into the second chakra, the sacral chakra is the space right above the base of the spine. So kind of where, right above the hips. And this energy center is really focused on creativity. It's based in the water element. So how we can build energy, create. Continuing to move here. And then it's also, the other permaculture principle is how we can creatively use and respond to change. So let's take, we'll find some stillness here. You can ground. And then when you're ready, we'll gently, again, start to make our way up to standing. And we'll make our way through a sun salutation A. So again, we can take this full flow in a chair as well. We can also take it on a wall. So I'm gonna take it on the mat, but I'll cue the movements. We can just choose where we are in space, wall, chair, or on a mat to do this. So we'll find our way to mountain. So the feet are planted, we're grounded here. We'll start to inhale to reach the arms up. We'll exhale to fold forward. So maybe your knees start to bend. We'll fold into it. Inhale, we'll find a halfway lift. So our spine is going to be nice and long. Back is flat. And then we will plant the hands. We're going to step back. So we're coming into a heart opener here. So if you're in your chair, again, you can find that extension in the spine. And again, this is where a part that I need to modify. You can have the knees on the ground, or you can come to a high plank. Wherever you are, we'll lower it down. We'll inhale to a gentle cobra or back bend. We'll exhale to press it back, downward facing dog. So in our down dog, our hands are going to be at least shoulders width apart. The fingers are nice and wide. Our feet are at least hip distance apart. And we'll start to send the hips up towards the ceiling. So taking a big breath in and a breath out. One more inhale and exhale, let it go. We'll gently start to come back to center. We'll find our way into a tabletop again here. So we move through our sun A and we'll start to move into the next week. So we'll take this tabletop. If you need to find any intuitive movements here or drop into your own kind of natural rhythm, maybe you take cat-cow, maybe you find some side bends and open up through the side body, bringing one ear towards the hip, the other ear towards the other hip. Just taking any movement that you need to here as we transition. And then we'll find our way, into this next chakra, the solar plexus. So we can land in our tabletop or seated. And so this chakra is located right in between the middle ribs here. So right there, you can just imagine it stacking up. It's kind of, we're working our way up from the base of the spine up. And this chakra is really focused on power and fire. So that's what we'll start to incorporate here. We'll find our way to a two-legged table, or this can be a three-legged table, but we'll reach the right leg out and back. Maybe dropping onto the toes, we can press back through the heel. And then if you would like, you can start to lift that leg up. And then we'll reach the left arm forward. That feels good. Maybe the left fingertips come down to the ground. Maybe the left toes come down. Maybe the hand reaches up, just playing around here with what you need. Wherever we are looking for that nice engaged core, starting to fire it up. Maybe you're noticing a shift in your body temperature. Definitely need to lose this jacket. Just noticing kind of what you need in the moment with this two-legged table on this side. And then we'll start to release it down. We'll come back to our tabletop, maybe bringing the hips from side to side, or taking a cat-cow, whatever you need here. And then we'll find our way into that two-legged table on the other side. So we'll send the left leg back, or if you did it on the other side, just send the other leg back. And maybe pressing back through the heel, pressing up onto the toes. And then we'll start to lift that left leg up, playing around if that feels comfortable for you, maybe dropping the toes back down. And then options to reach the right arm forward. So again, we can play around here, maybe dropping the right fingertips down, maybe dropping the toes down, just noticing what you need here in this moment, landing in. Grounding into it. And just taking a couple more breaths, finding that final expression here, and we'll bring it back to center. So slowly making your way back to a seated position. So maybe coming, down to the hips. We can cross the legs if you'd like. I invite you to cross the legs in the other direction too. We often have a dominant side that we will cross the legs or even the hands or the fingers to, but we can switch it up. Definitely get to experience a different shape and alignment of our bodies. So we'll ground here again in our seat, and we'll find a seated twist. So just notice where the hips are. We'll notice where the shoulders kind of stack over the hips, noticing our alignment. And let's start to inhale. We'll reach the arms up. And then exhale, we'll twist to the left or to the right, whichever way you guys want to twist. But we'll just find our expression, holding this twist just for a couple breaths. We'll start to inhale, bring it up, exhale to twist. And so options to land here in a twist, or if you want to find movement, maybe we inhale, bring the arms up and back to center, exhale to twist to the other side. Inhaling to bring it up, back to center, exhaling to twist. So again, your choice here, maybe landing in a twist, maybe finding that movement in between. We'll take just a couple more breaths here, working into this posture to your full expression, variation. And our permaculture principle for this week, for the third session, is to design from patterns to detail. And so kind of going along with our power or fire, it's kind of why this permaculture principle lands here is to work through that design process, to notice and witness and create what we want. And so we'll start to bring it slowly back to center. I'm seeing that somebody just popped in, so I'm going to admit them real quick. And we'll find our way to a standing position now here. And as we come into standing, making your way there, we'll reintroduce our goddess pose. But for this one, it's going to be a little bit more activating. We'll work, I'll give a couple variations, but it will work some balance and also some vocalization. So we'll find our way back to goddess. So the toes are going to start to point slightly out. The knees will bend. And so option one is to inhale to reach the arms up, exhale to come down into a squat, ha, and to make that audible ha sound or exhale. We'll inhale, ha. So to really bring the arms down, inhale, reach it up, exhale, ha. And so watch out, I just hit the wall behind me. Watch out for things around you if you are really releasing the arms down. We'll do one more of those. Inhale, ha. All right, and so another variation that we can take here is adding in, we're actually gonna draw the energy up, find our way to one leg. We'll draw the knee up and in, the arms can reach up, and we'll exhale, ha, and come down back to our goddess, ha. And then come to the other side, inhale, up, exhale, ha. And so either variation here, either stepping up, or if we just want to find inhaling to reach, exhaling. And so any variation that you would like to take, let's take a couple rounds. A few more. Last one. We'll slowly bring it back to center. Taking a moment here to take your eyes away from your screen, either to soften your gaze or to close the eyes if that feels comfortable to you. And just kind of notice what's going on in the body. Notice any sensation, maybe noticing the temperature of your body, maybe noticing your breath. Just allowing space to observe and witness here. And then I'll invite you to find, we'll move into this next session here. I'll invite you to stay standing, and we'll come into a balanced posture. So we'll take tree pose, and in our FIG programming and on the cards, it's actually a forest of trees. So it is a group posture or shape that we can take. We'll just have to imagine here today that we're all in the same room and we can send some energy through our hands. But we'll start to ground through the right leg, and we'll bring that left foot either heel on the ankle, toes on the earth. We can bring that foot up to the calf or up to the thigh. We want to avoid the knee, not to put any lateral pressure on the knee there. So just finding a space in your tree that feels comfortable and supportive. And again, taking your gaze to something that's not moving. So not the screen. If there's anything, you can find that drishti, that focal point. And then options to have the hands either at heart center or maybe bringing the arms wide. Maybe your arms come up, or we can imagine that we are turning our branches out. I love how there's actually a tree behind me. That's kind of cool. That we're turning maybe our branches out, imagining that we're sending every person in this training right now that's practicing some energy. And it's really great to do this in a group. I love to do it in a group because it not only everyone's laughing and giggling and people are kind of like wiggling a little bit, but they have people next to them to hold them up. So it's really a wonderful experience to share with people. And then we'll start to let this posture go. We can release, maybe staking out through the hips a little bit. Maybe rocking up onto the toes or rolling out through the ankles. Shaking the hands, whatever you need before we come to the other side. And so from here, we'll ground through that left foot or the opposite side from what you did before. You can either bring the heel to the ankle, toes on the earth, foot up to the calf or to the thigh. Take it where you want to go. And again, finding that focal point and taking any variation that you would like through the arms. Just taking another breath or two here. And we'll slowly start to release. We'll find our way back to a comfortable seated position. So you can make your way back down to the mat. And so our permaculture principle here for the week is to self-regulate and accept feedback. So that can mean a lot of different things, and specifically in our garden space is to, again, starting with that first principle to observe, is to just be a witness, notice what is going on, and then being willing to look and take in what's happening, and then self-regulate and apply anything that we need to shift or change the space. So with that, we'll come into our Anahata Kriya, or this is like our heart space movement here, seated, and we'll start to bring the upper body around the hips. So just rotating the torso around the hips. And this movement can be as small or as large as you would like. Just finding your breath again, finding that movement. And then slowly we'll start to find stillness. So just coiling back up, slowly coming back to that stillness. And then we'll start to bring it the other direction. So taking that same movement of the upper body, it might feel different on this side. Maybe you have a different movement pattern. But just noticing that, taking it in as information, no need to judge, just witnessing. We'll slowly start to coil it back up to center. And options here, again, to close the eyes, we can soften the gaze, look away from the computer screen. You can drop your chin towards your chest, and just taking a moment to rub the hands together. We'll bring the hands to the heart and just sending some love to somebody else that you deeply care about. Wherever they are in the world, just imagining that person, that animal, cultivating that sensation or that feeling that you have for them, sending them that love. And with that sensation in mind, we'll put a mirror right in front of ourselves, and we'll start to send that same love that we have for that person or that animal, and we'll start to send that same love back to ourselves. So just imagining this whole system of energy and love. And then we can slowly start to release the hands, maybe shaking the hands out gently, flicking through the fingers. We'll take a big breath in. Exhale, let it go. One more big breath in. Exhale, let it go. So we'll move into our next session here next week, the throat chakra, which is focuses on expression our vocalization, our ability to share our offerings with the world, but also tapping into the elements of ether or space. So not as tactile as the previous weeks, more esoteric in essence, I guess. So we'll work through with 2 different breaths today. So we'll start with a lion's breath. And if you need to shift your seat, if you want to come to a chair, we'll be seated for the next little part of this practice, or you can cross the legs the other direction, making any variation or movements that you need to here to be comfortable. But we'll start by finding lion's breath. So for this breath, definitely audible, definitely invigorating and heat building. We'll start to draw the breath in through the nose. And then as you exhale, we'll exhale out of the mouth and stick the tongue out. So yep, I did say stick the tongue out. So we'll inhale through the nose. Exhale. Let's keep that rolling. Inhale. Exhale. And take about 3 more rounds of this breath on your own. Two more. And then I invite you to return to your natural breath. Again, maybe tucking the chin towards the chest, softening the gaze, or closing the eyes. And just take a moment to notice any sensation here. Let's take one more round of that lion's breath. So we'll come back to center. Let's inhale. Exhale, stick out the tongue, let it go. Keep it rolling. And then last one. And again, allowing your gaze to soften or closing the eyes, tucking the chin, allowing some space for stillness just to witness and notice. And we'll come back and we'll work into our next breath practice for today. So this is a little bit more, well, it is empowering and yeah, it's very a connecting breath. It's also grounding. So it helps to kind of bring us back to center, creating that internal power here. And so we'll start by inhaling. And then as we exhale, we'll start to hum the breath out. So this is called bee breath or Brahmari breath. So we'll inhale. So just making that gentle hum. As we exhale, you'll feel that vibration in the throat and maybe in the mouth. Let's take a couple more rounds of that. Let's inhale. we'll start to return to that natural breath, again, taking a moment to pause and just to witness. So our permaculture principles for this week are, first one is to use and value renewables. And so just to witness, and as we're doing this breath work, it's just to kind of witness our own energy from that internal landscape and how we can cultivate or we can ground our energy with these breathwork techniques. And the next one is to use and value diversity. So how we can, in our garden space, kind of witness how much bounty and abundance can come when we layer in and create an ecosystem that is diverse. It creates resiliency, but also how we can build our internal practices to then create a resilient self. We can build up, have these different tools and approaches to continue to move through life. So let's do one more round of this Brahmari breath. So coming back to center, let's take a big breath in. You might take two more on your own. Returning back to your natural breath. Just allowing that space to observe, to witness, to notice any sensation. And so we'll slowly start to make our way into a quiet space and meditation space. So I invite you, if you would like to stay seated, you can maybe switch the cross of the legs again. If you would like to, we have a lot of options. So if you'd like to sit back in a chair, you can. If you want to lie down, if you have a space that you can lie down on the ground. I'll give two other variations that I love. One is legs up the wall. So you can come to a wall. It helps if you come to your side and bring the hips up to the wall, and then you can kind of bring the legs up. So that's one option, is to have the legs propped up. This is called one of the king restorative posture. It helps to kind of get a little inversion here to shift up the blood flow in the legs. And yeah, so that's one option. Another option, which is kind of a modified version of legs up the wall, is called constructive rest. And so this is a really great posture to help to kind of take pressure off the hips. If you have any low back tension, this is excellent for that. But we would bring the shin or the calves to a space that they can rest on, to a chair, to a couch. And just having this tension off both the knees and the hips helps to let the hip flexors relax, which is oftentimes, we have like 9 different hip flexors, and that's oftentimes contributes to different low back pain, as well as hamstring tension, and also SQL and other abdominal tension, like muscle tension as well. But please find any variation that you would like to land in. I am going to come back up to seated just so I can kind of guide you guys through this space. But please make yourself comfortable. Find any place that you need. And as we move into this stillness, again, the options to have the eyes closed. You can also soften the gaze, find that that focal point if you want to gaze at, maybe outside at something, or you have a picture that you particularly like that you would like to look at, you can do that. But just allowing yourself to rest here for a moment, letting go of any thoughts. And if those thoughts do start to creep by or come back into your mind, a practice or a tool can be to imagine just like a movie reel, and you're just watching those thoughts just as quickly as they come in, you're watching them exit the mind. Another option here, if stillness is challenging, which it is challenging, if you are more of a tactile person, you can start to bring the thumb and the pointer finger together and just kind of walk the thumb down the fingers, just tapping. So bring thumb to pointer finger, thumb to middle finger, thumb to ring finger, thumb to pinky, and just kind of going through. Or maybe you just bring your awareness to your breath. As you're here, making any shifts that you need to be comfortable, taking any of the options for support. I'm going to go quiet here just for a couple moments. So take some time and space for yourself and just surrender to the earth. So we'll slowly start to bring our awareness back into the space, back into our body. Just by deepening the breath, maybe taking a nice long inhale and a nice long exhale out of the mouth. And wherever you are, you can stay there. As we move into the last session of the week, we start to find our way into the practice of a partner breath work. And so if we were in space together, we would find a partner and we would have our backs resting against each other so we could have that feedback. We could notice, could feel the energy of both people. We don't have that right now. So if you are reclined or you're lying down, I encourage you, if you want to stay lying down, you can stay there. We'll use the ground as that kind of feedback. If you're in a chair, if you want to kind of rest the back body on a chair, if you're seated, if you can find a wall or something behind you, again, just to have that feedback. And wherever you are, we'll just start to notice the breath. Notice how it feels to breathe with the back body, with that grounding, with that space behind us to support. And then we'll start to come into just a deep belly breath here. So again, having that support, whether it's the ground, a chair, or a wall. We'll start to inhale, draw the breath deep into the belly, and maybe the hands can rest on the belly. Maybe one hand rests on the belly, one hand rests on the heart. Draw that breath deep and into the belly, and then exhale, let it go. Let's inhale, draw that breath into the belly. Exhale to let it go. Let's keep that breath flowing. Inhale deep into the belly. Exhale to let it go. Noticing how it feels on the back body to have that feedback behind us. Continuing with that breath. We'll take 2 more rounds here, expanding, drawing that breath deep into the belly. Exhaling to let it go. One more big breath into the belly. Exhale to let it go. So from here, we'll end the practice with 3 sounds of Om. So this is our last practice, our vocalization for session 7. And so options, you can bring hands to the heart, maybe hands drop by the sides, maybe one hand rests on the heart, the other one follows. And so the Om is a symbol, but also a sound that represents the unity that connects all beings on this earth. So every living being is thought to have this vibration running through it. So we can kind of think about that as we're saying the sound. So options, you can stay silent and just kind of soak in the vibration. You can hum along like we did in our kind of Brahmari breath, or you can make the sound. So let's inhale to prepare. We'll exhale out of the mouth to let it go. And then we'll inhale. Om. So we can gently start to come back into the space wherever you are. If your eyes were closed, maybe taking the gaze down and gently blinking the eyes open, maybe wiggling the toes and the fingers. Maybe taking a nice long stretch wherever you are. If you're on your back, if you're on the ground, reclined, maybe you start to walk the knees in, hug the knees into chest. If you're seated on the ground, maybe slowly starting to find movement, just gently coming back into the space. Wherever you are, just making your way back up. Take your time. One of my favorite teachers always says there's no need to rush. And I love that because there really isn't. So take your time getting back up. And thank you guys for practicing with me. We have our break or lunch right about now. You can just take a moment to maybe journal and write down any reflections that you have from practice, any thoughts, comments, questions, anything that you have, maybe just taking a moment to journal before you go off to lunch. And I'll also hang on here for a second if anyone has questions for me or any needs for support before I hop off and grab lunch. So feel free to unmute or drop in the chat if you need anything. Alrighty, so welcome back, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. I know some people have left, so we might have folks jumping back on as we continue through. I did share 2 things in the chat with you guys, the newsletters and then the session by session guide, which is kind of like a new little document I just created. So those will be helpful as we move into this next session for sure. So the overview for this third part of our training is we'll go through a session by session check-in. Then we'll work into some breakout room teaching, give you some space to kind of work through each different week or session. And then we'll have a period for reflections and Q&A on the practices. So that'll be definitely like a larger section just to check back in and get everyone's feedback, and also to share like your personal reflections as we went through the practice. And then we'll touch on just some evaluation and data management stuff. We'll look through the website together because I know that there is a lot of content on the website. So we will kind of go over that and talk about the different just components and competency checks and stuff along the way. And then we'll do a Q&A and we'll wrap it up. So again, I really appreciate you guys being here today. And yeah, let's get rolling with it. So for our session by session check-in, we'll just kind of go over a couple of the materials. And again, I did drop the newsletter. That is an updated newsletter that it still needs, I need to update it on the website as well. Just drop that PDF in there because I noticed that there was a couple things that were off with the previous newsletter. So yeah, so the one that's in the chat is the new newsletter, and then you also have in the chat the session by session guide, which will be helpful like as we're going through this, just as a again to kind of witness and see just a different kind of, I'm trying to find mine right now, just a different layout of the chakras, kind of the colors and how all the things go together. In this first session, you'll see on the newsletter there's going to be a recipe at the top. You'll have one of the permaculture principles, and then typically like the focus activity will be on there as well. And then a pose of the week. And so typically for each week, there's like 2 to 3 postures or practices included. For the newsletter, we just couldn't fit all that content on, so we just chose one. And so these will be helpful, like not only for the participants to have, and so we do recommend that you print these out so that people can, of course, like follow along. And again, it gives them a guide to go off of, but it's also helpful for the facilitator as well. I know Megan Garrity really appreciated, we didn't have these at first. And so like once we were able to create these, she said that it was a lot, it was a lot more comprehensive, like helpful to have that layout in front. So for this first week, root chakra, earth element, and working through the permaculture principle of observe and interact. We have, our postures, child's pose is listed here, but then we also have goddess pose or deep squat. This other infographic that's here to the left, how to help a plant flourish. These were actually created after the pilot. It was really when I started to develop, the website and more of the manual and getting into more of the content, that I was like, we have the permaculture principles, and those are great for more philosophical and ethical explorations of how we relate to the land. But I noticed that it was kind of missing a little bit, having to do with actually interacting and practices in the garden. So that's what these additional infographics are for. And these can not only be used for you guys as facilitators, but you can also print these off and give these to participants as well. So the first one is kind of basic, just to start off, is how to help a plant flourish. And so just the things that plants need here. And so additionally, with that being said, this program is set up, and you'll see in the manual that there's like a sample schedule, and there's components that we do want to cover every week. So we want to cover the permaculture principles. We want to work into the yoga shapes or practices. We want to work into the focus activity, but there are different things like the recipes or the cooking demonstrations, or in some of the weeks there's, the gardening activity. So whether that's like developing your pot and planting a plant in it, or it just kind of depends on the space that you're working in. So just being aware of all of that and planning accordingly. So if you are in a space that actually has a garden that you can go to, that you can explore and plant in, they are going to let you plant, then that you would kind of like build your programming around that space too. So we'll roll on to the second week. And so for this week, we work into the sacral chakra here. This is more about creativity, moving up a little bit more energetically as we kind of move through the chakras. So in the first week, we're really focused on grounding, and here we're kind of getting a little bit more movement with the cat-cow. You'll see that pose of the week here. And we'll get into more of the water element as well. So there is a water meditation that you can listen to. I know the audio is a little bit challenging. When I was taping that, I was near a really amazing creek. And I had a microphone, but it wasn't like close enough. So it is challenging to hear, but there is a script of the water meditation, so you can read that out loud when you are delivering the program. For this week, the permaculture principle goes into that. And then the planting methods is the little garden lesson for the day. So just going into different concepts there. And again, these garden information sheets they kind of like just briefly touch on different concepts. So if any of these things resonate more with you or with your group, you can always choose to expand upon that and build lessons like off of these sheets as well. All righty, so we'll move on to session 3. So we move into the solar plexus chakra here. So this is really about our power and vitality, working into more of like the seated twists. We have like the two-legged table that we practice in those goddess has to really help to build our energy. We have the permaculture principle to design from pattern to detail. And our the focus activity this week, do you bring the rest? Okay, let me check the chat. Yeah, do you bring the recipes in for them to taste and or make them as a part of a session? So you can. That is, you know, we try to create this program in mind with budgets and, you know, being like mindful of that. So if you do have a budget to be able to do the demos and you are, you know, you have your serve safe certification or anything that VCE requires you to have to be able to do that, then yes, I would say go for it. With that being said too, there is a resource, just a document on the website for this, but I will touch on this, is that a lot of places will, especially because you know you're doing this as a free program, as a community service, that different grocery stores will, you can ask like for donations, as far as like some grocery stores will give gift cards to support program funding. And also Walmart and Lowe's is really good about offering different programmatic funding as well through gift cards. I know Lowe's will like definitely do seeds. So you can always go to them and be like, hey, I'm delivering this program. You typically will need like a letterhead from your organization and just like a quick write up of what you're doing in the ask. But I've definitely used Lowe's in the past for that, to do that. But yeah, so that's, Michael, that was kind of a long tangent on your question, but to answer it more directly, you can bring the recipes for them to take home and try, and they can do that. You can also bring them in if you have a space, kitchen to cook. You can do a cooking demonstration with that too. I know Megan Garrity, I think she picked 2 of the recipes. So like it also doesn't have to be every week. So she did the smoothies with them in the second week. And then I think she did maybe the popsicles or something for like the last week. So you also don't have to do it every week as well. Yeah, so we'll pop back in here. Yeah, we have like the garden management infographic here for this week. So again, just a couple of tidbits and hints here to layer in. We'll go on to session 4. So moving to the heart chakra, a couple of different practices. The forest of trees. So you can kind of see in this picture that would ideally be, you know, you could have your group in a circle and allow them to like turn their branches or their hands out to each other and actually have that connection for the forest of trees. Yeah, and then the soil management, little infographic here, just going over a couple different, again, topics, hints that you can touch on that are helpful. And then in week 5, yeah, we move into more of the, so in the throat chakras, that vocalization, but it's also ether or space. So not as tangible of an element to kind of land on, but we do have like a self-expression activity for them and journals. So that is another thing. The 3 main, and if you go to we'll review the website, but when you go to the website, there's 3 main documents. So there's the manual, there's the supplemental materials, and then there are the yoga cards. And so the supplemental materials will have everything from these infographics to the newsletters to the journals. And so that's like a comprehensive document that has all of that. But then in each week, I made sure that I had like PDFs of each one separately outside of that. as well. All right, so I'll move to week 6. And so for this week, again, we're moving up. So we're working towards the third eye chakra, and this is based in our intuition and light. And so by this point, typically the kids will have picked up quite a bit of the different practices. They will have picked up, different breath work and everything, and they probably will want to share. And so this is definitely noted in the manual for even weeks like before this week. But I always like to offer space for the kids to teach back anything that they've learned. So any postures, anything that they want to share. A lot of times, again, I mentioned earlier about how some of the kids, when they came, started the program, they were really skeptical of yoga and all this movement. But throughout the program, they were super involved and they wanted to share. They even created some of their own yoga postures they wanted to share with the group. So just giving space for that, because as we work into week 6 and week 7, we're kind of moving towards more of the meditative practices, the visualization and stuff like that. So we want to allow space for movement, and either as the facilitator, you can teach that, or again, open up the space for the kids to share. With the gardening practices, we also get closer to kind of that harvest time. So here we're really focusing on integrating the growing spaces, talking about more permaculture kind of aspects here of the perennial landscapes and how we can build food forests and observe different layers. There's also a couple infographics on the food forests where it shows the different layers and kind of talks about those too. All right, so for week 7, this is, of course, the last week. So we are closing up. Our permaculture principle for the week is to, obtain a yield. And so just allowing, again, if you've had the ability to grow things, if you have a garden space or you have different pots or earth boxes or anything that you were able to grow in with the kids, just noticing here how you can harvest or continuing to maintain, supporting that for them. And then the focus activity here is really about closing, gratitude, reflection, but taking a pause to acknowledge all of the work that the kids have done. So you work through the whole program, you're here, and now can we actually acknowledge and appreciate all the work that we've done? So the partner breath work is one of the poses of the week. The ohms as well. We did both of those at the end of our practice. But as you can kind of see in the picture, you would have them sit back to back. And the intention is that you're just kind of noticing the movement of your partner, that connection there. You can cue them through different breath practices from the week. It is always fun to do either the Brahmari breath or lion's breath when there is more activation. It's always interesting to kind of feel that and sense into that. The garden aspects for this week is to focus on harvesting and that abundance here. So just a couple of other tips there.
Our hesitations are and what's holding us back yet. And but you pretty well just tapped into a lot of those resources are on the actual website. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to close the rooms and I will see you guys back in the main session. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was nice chatting.
How's it going?
Hey, Samantha, it's going. We're just rejoining the main session from breakouts. Alrighty, I think we are still waiting for some folks to get back in the room. Alrighty, so I think Samantha hopped in here, and if you want to check in, Samantha, say hello. I'm not sure.
Hi, checking in. I'm Samantha Harden. I'm an associate professor of human nutrition, foods, and exercise. And one of the things that we do, seeing lots of familiar names and faces on the list, but some new to me. My lab is all about providing training and technical assistance and support for our evidence-based or evidence-informed interventions. One of the things that I have found in the trainings and would love to hold space for is as you're learning all of this information and you are sitting here excited, you might also be like, but here are the top 3 barriers that I'm thinking about for my community or my space that I want to offer this in. And I consider myself as a specialist, the barrier buster. So I've been around for 15 years and have seen a lot, not specifically with this program because it's new, but I'm here to help if anybody's been looking at any of the material or any of the expectations as somebody facilitating the program. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help share experience that has helped in the past, but I'm also happy to just be I don't want to say a spider on the wall, but like I'm happy to take that role if needed.
Thank you, Samantha. Yeah, if anybody has, this time and space that we have here for the next 10 minutes or so is really to reflect on any of those practices, how teaching any of those practices went. I know when I was hopping in and out of groups, there was a lot of discussion more so about the application and how or where you might share these practices. So anything that anybody wants to share, but as Samantha just mentioned too, if there's any questions or any concerns, any kind of like barriers that are coming up, please use the space to share there as well. So I'm gonna go quiet for a second if you want to drop anything in the chat or unmute.
Some barriers I can think of just off the bat, mostly surrounding the food stuff is just like having access to like a blender and an oven for those spinach crisps, things like that. And then more so for the yoga, are there like discount stores you can get yoga mats from where we could bring them to the kids? Because I'm not sure how big these groups are gonna be, but I'm assuming like 10 to maybe even 20. So I'm just wondering if there is kind of a spot to provide the mats and whatnot for the kids.
The one thing that we can offer in our other programs, we have a list of ways that you could potentially get discounted or even recycled. Like our local studio, they basically hold on to people's mats for 2 months, and then if they're still in the lost and found, they get donated. So you could get on a list for something like that. The other thing that's
talking about like imbalance yoga.
Yeah, so
okay, cool.
But if you're not in the area, for those who are elsewhere in the state, kind of building those partnerships could be an easy way. The other thing that I would encourage both within FIG and just beyond is you don't necessarily need a mat to still do these practices. They can, as we're nodding along, so we know like you can do it anywhere wearing anything. And not a lot of people know that. And so by showing you don't have to wear specific clothes or have a specific thing to lay down or be on, you know, a towel, a t-shirt, like anything can do, can really help people see how accessible it is. And then also if you happen to get, you know, a sponsorship that can provide 10 mats, or so even if like I'll use the studio that I work out in Balance in Blacksburg, Virginia, you know, they do have those mats that they donate, but they might also be willing to do like a 50% off for this specific program if you then, you know, have them listed as a sponsor. So we can have some information about that. And then your other question related to the food, I'm probably going to have to kick back over to Megan. But often, even just preparing it in advance and having the taste test together is still part of the experience. So using the spaces and places that you would be preparing other foods, but I'll turn that back over to Megan.
All right, thank you. I'm the queen of excuses, so that was really helpful.
I think checking in with your community partners. So like a majority, I know especially like West End Center, they do have like a kitchen actually that is a community kitchen that they share in their parking lot right there. So like specifically for that one, you'd probably be able to use that kitchen. But other community partners, you know, if there are different ones, you know, and for everyone, just checking in and seeing what their resources are. I know that a lot of agents also have like, they might do food demos. So they might have like blenders. So that's, if that's not something that you do have, it like you can also reach out to agents as well and see what they have. But again, asking, looking at different spaces or corporations like Walmart and stuff, like different grocery stores, they will also do like donations and stuff like that. So just looking into their policies, and you could either like get a blender for the program and then leave it with your community partner, or, you know, figure out a way, whatever works for you in that space. Samantha also mentioned is for the kids to make the foods with their parents, yeah, or guardians, and take a photo and share, check in, versus like actually making it. Yeah, so that's another thing. And something that I know Michael had asked earlier is that, you know, the recipes on the newsletters are, it's, you don't have to do that. Like those are more for the participants to have. And like, you'll see in the sample schedule that, you know, you might be able to do this activity or this recipe, like if you have the resources, but if they aren't there, like you don't have to do the recipe every week. I think in our pilot, I think Megan ended up doing 2 demonstrations. But yeah, so just like layering that in when you can. Did that answer?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, anybody else have any thoughts, questions, reflections from either from the breakout session teaching or from our practice earlier, like the experiential practice?
I have a quick question. I saw that you sent updated newsletters. I had printed everything from the website before the training this morning. So I'm gonna print the new newsletters. Did anything else change?
No, it didn't. And so do you mean, did you print like multiple copies of those newsletters?
I just printed the one that was on the website, but then I was looking at the kind of the one pager that you sent in the chat that's got all the weeks, and I noticed that week 4 is not the forest through the trees. So I was like, wait, what? And then Fraser had let me know that the newsletters that I printed from the website had changed versus the ones you sent out in the chat.
Yes. So that was something that I had picked up on. We had I had some other folks do the newsletters, and I just noticed that like last night. So I just like redid those newsletters. So that is why the newsletters changed is because there was a couple postures that were not like they didn't correlate with the yoga cards and the actual like practice portion. So yeah.
I'll add to that, one of the reasons that Parsi, my lab, the Physical Activity Research and Community Implementation Lab, doesn't print out like bound program manuals is because we want to be able to make updates literally, you know, the night before, or as we get new information or feedback from agents and all of those kinds of things. So you know, if you are preparing for your program, and obviously Megan's talked about this process of like registering that you're going to do it, she can highlight, you know, what's changed or what hasn't since training. But pretty generally speaking, like everything's going to be like you're not going to be, oh, the night before that you printed it, and if you did, then you just roll with it. And that's also part of the yoga practice, is going with what you have. But all of our programs are on the website so that they can be real time and updated. So whether you're doing Lift or FIG or any other program, please do see the website always for the most up to date, like consent forms and things like that as well.
So I just want to make sure, I only need to reprint the newsletters, nothing else changed from this morning. No, I agree, that's awesome, no worries, I just wanted to make sure I have the most up to date in my book.
Yes. Yeah. Just the newsletter.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Does anybody else have any thoughts, questions, reflections, anything?
I guess I have another question.
Yep.
I was wondering, so we were kind of talking about based on what we have available to us naturally. I don't always see myself in the position where we'll be able to actually create a garden. So how can we still implement the permaculture practices when we won't be in like won't have that aspect?
Yeah, and so and we'll like touch on this when we do the website review and talk about the asynchronous components, but the permaculture principles, you know, in essence, when we might look at them or have like a first contact with them, they might seem like just something that relates to the garden space or like our land, but it really is, it can be reflected back to our internal space. So like the first principle of observation, you know, that is a huge core component of also yoga philosophy and how we can be still and mindful and observe our internal space. So these practices can be related not just to the garden, but to that internal landscape, even to, we can carry them out into like a park setting, or if we have an outdoor space, any kind of thing like that. But there are videos each week that talk about these principles. And so you can kind of check that out in the asynchronous part of the training, and it'll talk through a lot of those.
Okay, thank you. I know you said some of that before. I just wanted to hear it again, I suppose.
Okay, sure. Anything else before we kind of get back into our last little bit of training here? Move into the evaluation and data management portion. Talk about this. Again, feel free to drop questions, comments in the chat. And we'll keep moving here. So I created these little like the training competency checklists as a resource for you guys to just follow and kind of keep track of the components of this training, and then to support you into registering and into delivery. So today, you know, you can check this first box where we've almost completed the synchronous components of this training. And there is a training competency check that all of these are on Qualtrics. So if you do not have a Qualtrics account for some reason, all of them, all of the of these will be uploaded in a PDF format so that you can fill those out and then just get them back. Either, you know, if you're working with volunteers and they don't have access, then they would turn them back into you, and then you could input the data into Qualtrics. If you aren't working necessarily with agents or have access to Qualtrics, but are delivering the program, then you could send the information back to me. So after this training and the completing that competency check, we would then go onto the website and explore the asynchronous components of training. So we'll do a little website review after this and check out all those different components. But for each week, there are about 3 to 4 videos for each week that you can watch. And then also the different components and infographics and program materials for each week. So after your asynchronous training, you'll also have a competency check there that is, again, going to be in Qualtrics. Then finally, we have the intent to deliver FIG and the program registration, which is another Qualtrics link that you will complete. That'll just help us get some clarity there on how to. Okay, I'm seeing. I know people have had a lot of issues with internet today. I know everyone's seems to be getting kicked off and coming back on. So we will keep moving and hopefully they can get back on. Yeah, so all these different, the trainings and competency checks, and then the intent to deliver, all of these are really important to complete because they not only like help us know where you guys are at as far as your training and everything is considered, but also it helps us to make any kind of improvements or adaptations to the program training or to the program itself. So this is evaluation and data management for during and then after program delivery. So after completing the full FIG program, we're going to kind of look at what evaluations need to happen during. So we use the FNEP eval from Family Nutrition Program. So that survey is going to look at, there's 2 different age groups, but that survey looks at vegetable consumption and activity and different choices as far as that's concerned. But then we also use the VCE Youth Gardener Assessment. And so again, FIG is a 7-week program. So the first week we'll kind of do an introduction. We'll talk about our first session. But we also need to do the pre-program participant surveys. So both of these surveys, and as the agent, you would then add these at the end of your training. So with the pre and then the post, you would add them into Qualtrics. And so, of course, we would want to de-identify any information. So you can use numbers to kind of keep the pre and post data together as far as how we're organizing that data. And this will all be in, of course, in the link to put these evaluations up. These specific evaluations are not live yet, so they should be in the next couple of weeks. They'll be up and ready for you to go, and they will have a description on how to fill them out and everything. The PDFs are available online. And so those would need to be printed out so that the participants can fill them out. Yeah. So the next important thing here is the facilitator delivery process evaluation. So again, on the website, this is going to be a chart, and it's just asking you specific questions for every session that you're doing every week. And so it'll ask you just some general questions about the temperature, the weather, how many participants showed up. It'll ask you FIG specific questions as well. So like which program components that you offered that day, things like that. So this is also very important. You will have the chart, right? So you can print that out and you can fill that out every week. And then at the end of the program, that will also need to be transferred into Qualtrics, and there's a link for that as well. The FIG post-program facilitator evaluation will be like the final evaluation of, it kind of talks about a little bit about the training as well. And so we want to know how the training supported your program delivery, but then also how the just delivery went itself. So those are the two sheets for kind of data management and what we will need from you guys for feedback. And again, these are all really important for us to not only kind of see how the programming is supporting the participants, but also these evaluations that you guys will fill out as facilitators are going to help us to then adapt and shift the program as we need to. So I'm going to stop sharing and we'll go check out the website because I know we've had a lot of questions, especially about the, permaculture principles and how to integrate those if you don't have a garden space, and just different how to teach these different concepts that we're working with, especially the yoga postures and everything. So we'll kind of explore this together. I'll kind of talk through it, and please either drop into the chat if you have specific questions, or if you want to unmute kind of as I'm going through each section here, feel free to unmute and just ask questions. But yeah, so this is our landing page for all the materials. We do have like the program contract, which is helpful to take a look at. Just a little bit about the overview of the program, my contact information. These are all the pictures of from our pilot program that Megan Garrity did. Nice little group meeting. Megan Tierney and Megan Garrity. That's the Megans. We're all Megans there. And then the weekly materials. So these are going to be probably the main materials that you use for the program. So the program manual is going to have not just like the foundational information, but it's going to have each week sample schedules, all the things there. And then the supplemental materials, this is where I was talking about, that has all of the extra materials layered in there. But there are also, you'll see down below, they're also in each week as well, just for clarity. The yoga cards are going to be really helpful to print out and have. And I know that in the pilot, Megan, actually, the kids really wanted a set themselves. So she was able to print those out and hand them out to the kids the last session, so that they really enjoyed that. The newsletters, this will be updated today. I have not updated that yet, but those are also, again, helpful, not just for you to kind of witness and see all the different components on one sheet, but also to hand out to participants. Yeah, so as we go down, we also have some more evidence to support the program. So any of these papers, these are some of the foundational papers that we kind of use to support our choosing different program components. So those are helpful to kind of just give a quick read and look through. A couple of books for program delivery. This is one of my favorites. Actually, I had a fangirl real quick. I had Ira Wallace sign it for me when I got to see her speak a bunch at a conference. But this book is obviously well loved. I don't know if you can kind of see, has a lot of post-its in it, but it's a phenomenal resource. It's very accessible too. So it has a lot of information in it in a way that is pretty easy to understand. I think it gives like really good introductions to big concepts. But my favorite part is that it has every month it has a to-do list for what to be looking for in your garden or what to be doing, and then a couple of other teaching points throughout. So this is a really great resource. I've definitely used it in other garden curriculums that I've created and delivered. So that's a great one. Reclaiming Our Food is another one that just talks about a variety of different landscapes and different organizations that have worked to build gardens or food movements. Growing Great Vegetables in Virginia, there's like multiple, this is Ira Wallace again, and she has a bunch of different states. Introduction to Permaculture, also another great one. So this is a little bit about the synchronous and asynchronous components here with the competency check. So again, this is a link to the initial post like synchronous training competency check that you guys will take after having this training today. And then this is that document that we just looked over in the slides, just to kind of keep track of all the different components here for evaluation. So yeah, we'll come to the asynchronous components. And so for pretty much each week, there's going to be a facilitator permaculture principles video. There's going to be a yoga shape cues for the facilitator. And then for a few of the weeks, there are a practice video that's going to be a little bit longer, and it will incorporate not just the postures or the shapes for the week, but it'll incorporate a little bit more movement and offer a flow. And so for that specific practice, you can always, if you have the ability to share that with your group, you can always put that on play for your group. You can use it for yourself to just kind of explore that practice. We also have supplemental materials for each week. Again, these are located in that one document, the full supplemental materials document, but we also have them here just for, again, ease, because the supplemental materials document is almost 70 pages. And so to kind of have to go through that and print the whole thing, you definitely can, but it might be more feasible to just kind of pick out the things that you know that you need for your specific training or your group that you're going to be working with. So each week is going to have a journal or some kind of activity here. Most of them also have a body scan or some kind of script that you can read, whether that's a meditation, visualization. And then there's usually a couple infographics. There's definitely going to be a garden management or garden practice infographic. This food forest layers is just another complementary one here. We'll continue to move move through this. Session 2, we see the permaculture principles, shapes. We have the water practice. Again, meditation, dream life journal. Continue to move through session 3. We actually have 4 videos for this one. And so the additional video is going to be the facilitator's values assessment. And so that just kind of talks through how to facilitate that. And I definitely, this is in the manual as like the facilitator's challenge, but I definitely would recommend that before you teach each session that you go through and do the journal prompts on your own, just so that you can have that experience. You can share your process with them, how you worked through it. But these are all here, the supplemental materials. Actually, I guess this week has 5 videos, so there is a progressive relaxation. Again, you can use these kind of videos either for yourself to experience, or you can use them to just play them for the group. So I'll continue to move through, again, our videos for the week, supplemental materials, videos. This one has, again, the facilitator activity video here, the youth teaching youth activity, which is really helpful. Then session 6, we have some other videos here, supplemental materials, and then coming to the last bit of training. Question? Is there a question there? Someone? Nope. Okay. So for again, the asynchronous training, once you've kind of worked through those videos, we do have a competency check for that as well. Again, Qualtrics link. Before delivery of the training or the program, excuse me, we do have this post-training survey. So again, we really want to know how both the synchronous and asynchronous components went for you guys, so that we can adapt and shift as we need to. And then this is really for you guys for planning considerations as you start to think about where, when, with who you're going to develop your program. So there is this document for facilitator planning that asks a whole bunch of questions just so that you can get clear, again, providing that clarity for yourself, but also for participants. You can be on the same page with your community partners. As I also mentioned, this program is very adaptable. So we definitely want to include the permaculture principles. We want to include the yoga practices and shapes, but there are other components of the training that we might not include, or that we might include one week and not include another week. So for this specifically, you can download this weekly schedule and you can create your own. And then the needs for support, I kind of talked about that earlier, but there's a lot of different corporations that do offer, whether it's gift card support or material support for program delivery. You typically just need a letterhead, and you can get in contact with them through their donations office. And then this is just a sample program flyer that you can use through Canva. This is specifically during delivery. So again, in your initial session, maybe you share the different energetic systems, the chakras, maybe you share about the 8 limbs of yoga, the permaculture principles, and flourishing. And so these documents here are not just for you to kind of support and provide clarity for you, but these can be printed off and handed out to participants as well. The process evaluation. So this is what I was talking about with that chart, where every week you will kind of fill out, the weather, the temperature, how many participants, the different components that you offered for each. And then at the end of the whole program, you'll put that into Qualtrics. Again, during the first session, these are the evaluations that we will we will use for that pre-evaluation. The weekly journal, again, facilitator challenge here. If you haven't already filled this out or worked with this, I encourage you to do that before you deliver the program, just so that, again, you have experience. You can kind of get into the process and then share on it as well. And then the yoga practice cards, they're down here as well, just because you can share them with the participants if you want. After FIG delivery, We'll have a closing session, you know, that last week 7 session to focus on reflection. Excuse me. We also want to be sure to complete the post-program evaluations as well. Again, Qualtrics links, and you don't have to fill out the, just hold on to the pre-evaluations. And then each of these Qualtrics links will, again, these need to be updated. They'll be updated in the next few weeks, but they will have both pre and post, and we will need de-identified information. So like no names or anything like that for the participants. You can just number them to keep track of that pre and post data. And then the final thing is the post-program facilitator evaluation. So after your complete delivery of the program and everything, we just want to have feedback on how your program went, on how training was, and all the things. So that is our website review there. Did you guys have any thoughts, any questions, anything specific at this point?
When will the updated newsletters be online? Are they up now?
They are not up right now. I'll probably upload those after we get off training here today.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I can do that. And I did see in the chat that someone had asked about like all the documents that were in the chat. I can definitely send a follow-up email with all of those as well. So I'll send the new newsletter. It'll also be uploaded. But I'll be sure to send the session by session guide, because that is not on the website yet, but I will also add that to the website. All right, so any other questions? I know there's a lot of different components of the training. So if you have any specific program component trainings or delivery questions or asynchronous training questions.
I think there's a question about async training spacing in the chat.
Oh, okay. How do you suggest we space our asynchronous training for best results? So the way that, because that specific part of the training was honestly, it was developed week by week as we were going with our pilot program. So Megan would receive the videos on a Friday and she delivered the program on a Wednesday. And so I think having at least a week in between could be helpful to start to work through the materials, watch the videos, kind of work through those things. Now, I know you guys will not be delivering the program and doing the asynchronous at the same time. Of course, you can always refer back to those videos, but I would say probably if you give yourself, you know, a week in between, if you can. If not, if you don't have that time in between, you know, at least a couple of days to be able to process that information, take it in, do the journal activities. Again, we definitely recommend that you give yourself the space to interact and experience all of the pieces of the program material.
And I'm just speaking for Pam because I know that we had talked about this in our group, but I think she's referring to the idea of if they could do this at 4-H camp. So I know it's 7 sessions and 4-H camp is typically like, I think 4 days or something like that. But if anybody else wants to talk about that.
Well, I actually, when we were in our teaching session, I had the same idea, Pam. This is Deborah over in Arlington, especially since we have the yoga session and the creek and critters and environmental ed. And I thought about many ways to take the yoga practices, whether we were out along the Appalachian Trail, sitting on the rocks, or one of the tree logs that had fell down. I saw that as very doable opportunity. In terms of the yoga, we have yoga offered, and cooking is also offered at camp in the Arlington, Fairfax, and Alexandria cluster. So I do see it very doable, but it wouldn't be like it would be abbreviated version. I don't know if that helped, Pam.
That's awesome. Thank you, April and Deborah.
You are welcome, and call me if you need me.
I will.
I
I know
I
you're a
regret not
master
taking those.
gardener.
I regret not taking those trees down because another idea came in my breakout session where those trees would have worked for me.
I have some extra trees if you need some.
All right, I'll be emailing you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think too, I'll you know, because this program was developed for the 7 sessions specifically. But I think that, you know, if you have a specific amount of time with the kids at 4-H camp, you know, let's say you do only have 1 session a day with them and it's 30 minutes, then maybe you choose to blend the concepts from session 1 and session 2 or session 3 and session 4 to kind of package and like get all of those different components into 1 session. That's one thought that came to mind, but also our intention with FIG is that it would be a 7-week, 7-session program. So, but yeah, that could also be done.
But we can also too, in 4-H, offer it as a specialty camp, which means that we could sign a group up to do it over the summer for 7 weeks. Because they always ask the agent, what is your summer program? So you can do it that way as well if you don't want to do it already at one of the 4-H centers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point too.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, tapping into again different community partners like community gardens. Definitely always need help, support for programming, and especially like having a pre-packaged program instead of having to create all the curriculum to do that. That could be supportive for them too. Yeah, Pam, did all those answers help answer your question?
Yes, that was all very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
I have like I guess like a plagiarism question. So like since we are going to be using this framework, is there like some kind of like disclaimer we should give beforehand? Like this is not like just to give the credit, like just to give credit where it's due kind of thing. Like how should we go about dot dot dot. Did that make sense?
Yeah, like a citation for the program. Just yeah, you can talk about the and this is something actually me and Samantha had just sat and talked about last week, but and it needs to go on the website, but so thank you for bringing that up. I do appreciate that. And acknowledgements is like what I would call that.
Yeah,
but
I like that word.
Yeah, so just mentioning, you know, all of our resources do have like content developed by, infographic created by, and then we do have like our Parsi Lab logo and Virginia Cooperative Extension logo with a non-discrimination statement. So all of the materials that would be like outward facing to participants definitely have that. I think most of our materials have it anyway, even if it's like facilitator based. So we at least have that, but yeah, you can acknowledge the Parsi Lab, Physical Activity Research and Community Implementation Lab, and Virginia Cooperative Extension. As you're
Okay, cool.
that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for asking. That's a good question.
I have a silly question, I think.
No questions are silly.
Well, I was looking through the pre and post tests or education surveys for K through 2, and I don't see any answers you're looking for. For example, the last one, I think all those kids should wash their hands before eating, but I don't know if this survey is trying to make a different point that one thing is worse for you than another. So do you have like answers that you're looking for these?
For the here, let me pull that one specifically up. K
I
through
think 1 through
2.
5 are pretty obvious. 6, to me, I feel like I would encourage them to say all of them, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Oh gosh, yeah. So here, let me just share that. Yeah, so they should definitely wash their hands after all this. I feel like, um, I'll share with you guys so you can kind of see this one survey, what the question is about. Yeah, so this is again the K through 2 FNEP survey. Kids being active, asking about healthy snacks, vegetables, dairy, fruits, and then the question was, yeah, about 6 kids who should wash their hands before eating. And so yeah, all these kids need to wash their hands. I actually don't have like the specific key for this, but that is, yeah, they should wash their hands. Yeah, thank you for asking that.
I realize that not everybody on this Zoom is ServSafe certified, but if you have, ServSafe certification or any kind of food safety background, like a food handler certification or anything like that, that's a big one. You know, if you do anything before you touch food that you were touching an animal, touching any kind of objects, then you'd want to wash your hands before you prepare any food.
Thank you, April. Righty, so any other thoughts or questions?
I guess I have another question. So I know that to like teach yoga, obviously not in all cases, but it's like for money, I guess, commercially, you have to have like a yoga certification. Are there any certifications that we should like try to attain or just be mindful of during this facilitating this program?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and so again, like this program specifically is for agents, and so like we are leaning on the fact that agents have like a specific background and training, or if there are volunteers that are being trained, that they have the support of an agent. And this is kind of like coming out of a community need and an ask, and things that agents are being asked to do to teach mindfulness and movement and meditation. And so while yes, like you mentioned, more of a commercial standpoint, like from that standpoint, most people would want to be one, have insurance, to have a certification, either 200-hour or more. But for this specific training, because we're just working through like the postures, and again, like the agents have that background training, we're just supplementing kind of here. And we actually, and really exciting, we do have a 200-hour RYT that we're building right now at Parsi Lab, specifically for agents. That'll be super affordable and also be during work hours, that kind of rolls with Virginia Tech's semester. So that is another avenue to dive deeper into that. But again, that's as we're Thank you, April, for dropping that in there. Yeah, it's called Ivy. Yep. So feel free if you are interested. You can submit the interest form there. But we do have our schedule up for when that's going to be. But yeah, so that was a lot of information.
That's okay. Thank you so much. I was just wondering after we talked about like maybe it'd be nice to have the food cert as well, but if it's all supplemental, then it sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ServSafe is typically offered like VCE typically offers that. I'm not sure. I think the last time I did one, it was in Roanoke, but that is a class that you can also take. I think it's like a day or two, maybe a day of in-person.
I'm sorry. Let me turn my video on. Check Fauquier in Rapidan. They had a class offering, but I wasn't sure the date. Also, it's a little cheaper online too than VCE. Not to say that we shouldn't support VCE, but if you take it online or locally, you can have it a lot sooner as opposed to, waiting for it to. With Fauquier, the agent in Fauquier, Lena Newen, had a session coming up.
And I'll just plug in that the ServSafe certification for the manager ServSafe certification is an overkill for what we need. You just need a food handler, and the food handler is online. And if you actually go to Destiny and type in ServSafe, it'll show you all the classes that are being available, like or that are available throughout the state. Because like I teach it in Spotsylvania and Stafford,
Okay.
and they teach it all over the state. Andrea Hobner is a teacher as well for your Southwest area. And then, but the food handler is online. It's $15 and it is just exactly what you need if you're interested in getting something like that.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, April, because I did not know that. I knew that there was one coming up that Lena was doing. And I do know if you go online, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Alrighty, anything else? I just want to give a little bit more space. Any final thoughts, questions, comments? Nope. Okay. So we'll wrap up then at this point. I do want to offer space and time for you guys to reach out to me as you're working through this asynchronous training, as you're working through your planning considerations and all the things for FIG. So feel free at any time. You guys have my email. Feel free to reach out. We can schedule a one-on-one meeting if you need to talk about anything further. I will, just for transparency and clarity here, I will probably be on leave towards the beginning of April, end of March time. But I'll be kind of like checking in email from there, but I will definitely be back towards the end of May, beginning of June. So I'll definitely be back then. And in that interim, if you don't hear back from me, you can also reach out to Dr. Harden, Samantha, that was here earlier, and I will share in our follow-up email, I'll share her information as well, just in case you guys need to get in contact. So please feel free to schedule a meeting, reach out, and let me know how I can support you guys as you kind of work through this material. And I'll share the documents, update the website, get that follow-up email to you guys. But we'll just do a little wrap-up practice here to end our day. So again, maybe coming away from your screen, we've been on the screen a lot today. feel free to either take your gaze away to another wall. Maybe you have a window that you can look out of and just take your gaze outside, witnessing the weather that we're having. It's a little bit gray and dreary here, a little windy, the trees are rustling. Just stepping back from the screen, noticing what's going on outside. And I invite you to either, again, soften the gaze or to close the eyes if it feels comfortable, maybe tucking the chin. And maybe rocking forward onto the toes and back onto the heels, just kind of stretching through the feet here, finding that gentle movement in the feet. And then maybe rolling from side to side on the feet. We'll just do a quick body scan so you can find your way back to stillness, but we'll work up from the feet up to the head, just noticing different parts of the body. So we'll bring our awareness to the feet, noticing sensation here. And we'll bring awareness to the ankles, noticing sensation here. Bring awareness to the lower part of the leg, so the shin bone, the calves, just noticing any sensation. And we'll bring our awareness to the knees, so noticing the kneecaps, the sides of the knee, the back of the knee, noticing sensation here. We'll bring our awareness to the upper parts of the legs, so the thighs, the hamstrings, quads. Noticing sensation here. Then we'll bring our awareness to the hips. So noticing the parts of the hips that are connected to your seat, the sides of the hips, the front of the hips. Noticing sensation here. Then we'll bring our awareness to the belly, to the back body, to the sides here, the ribs. Noticing sensation here. We'll bring our awareness to the heart space. Noticing the front of the heart, noticing the shoulders and the back of the heart, maybe those upper ribs, and just noticing sensation here. Bring our awareness to the shoulders, so the tops of the shoulders, the back of the shoulders, the front of the shoulders, noticing any sensation here. And then we'll bring our awareness down to the upper part of the arms, so the triceps and the biceps, noticing any sensation here. We'll bring our awareness to the elbows, noticing the outside of the elbows, the inside of the elbows, noticing sensation here. And then we'll bring our awareness down to the lower parts of the arms, so the forearms. Noticing sensation here. And then we'll bring our awareness down to the hands. So noticing the back of the hands, the palm of the hand, the fingers, the thumbs. Noticing sensation here. And then we'll start to bring our awareness up through the arms, back through the shoulders. We'll bring our awareness to the neck, noticing the back of the neck, the sides of the neck, the throat. Letting our awareness soak in here. And then we'll bring awareness to the head, so to the chin, to the ears, the back of the head, the temples, the forehead, the eyes, nose, mouth, the front of the face. And then we'll bring awareness to the crown. So noticing the top of the head, noticing sensation here. Then from the crown of the head down the rest of the body, we'll start to grow our awareness, just noticing our whole body here in space. Noticing any sensation here. Then we'll bring one hand to the heart and the other hand can follow. We'll gently tuck the chin, and with this awareness, we'll reinvite our intention back into our body, back into our being. And so whatever that intention was, just allowing it to be a reminder, an affirmation for yourself and for your work. To carry that with you. You can also change it if you need, but just allowing it to be a force for you, a place to come back to remember. And we'll take a big breath in through the nose. Exhale out of the mouth, let it go. Gently start to come back into the space, maybe blink the eyes a couple times, come back into it, and take your gaze back outside, maybe shake out through the hands. And that kind of closes off our practice here today, our training here. I invite you guys to one practice that I really like to share, especially whenever I start a new program or degree or training of any sort. I like to write myself a letter. And so if you want to take the last 9 minutes of our scheduled time to write yourself a letter that you can open at the end of your program delivery for FIG. I always like to do that. It's interesting how much we can change or shift or grow into something as we are on our own experiential and educational journey of facilitating this program. So I will stay on here for at least 10 more minutes. I will stay until at least 2. You guys are free to go. I really appreciate you guys taking the time today to come be in this training with all of us, to share your energy and your insights, and to support especially youth to better get to know themselves and to develop their community. So thank you guys so much for being here today.